Commander Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the tactical space station Vigilant, watching distant stars through viewports that hadn't been upgraded in 30 years. The station's aged hull stretched out before her, its dull gray surface marked by decades of micrometeorite impacts. Most of the fleet considered the Vigilant a relic, a remnant of humanity's early attempts at deep space defense that should have been decommissioned years ago. The military brass had essentially done exactly that, turning the once proud experimental weapons platform into a glorified training post. They'd stripped away most of its advanced systems, leaving only the outdated original equipment that modern ships had long since abandoned. Being assigned here was considered career suicide, a fact Chen's colleagues had been quick to point out when she accepted the position. But Sarah Chen saw something in the old station that others missed. She'd spent months studying its original technical specifications, uncovering hints about its true purpose. The Vigilant wasn't just a defensive platform. It had been part of Project Oracle, a classified weapons development program that was suddenly shut down without explanation 2 decades ago. "Commander, we're picking up something unusual on the long-range sensors." Lieutenant Maya Patel's voice came through the station's internal comm system, interrupting Chen's thoughts. Well, you should probably see this yourself." Chen made her way through the station's curved corridors, their surfaces showing wear but maintained with obvious care. Her small crew might be considered washouts and rejects by the rest of the fleet, but they took pride in their post, keeping the old station running at peak efficiency despite its age. The monitoring room was dimly lit, dominated by displays that used holographic technology that predated the modern quantum imaging systems. Lieutenant Patel sat at her station, her dark eyes fixed on readings that shouldn't have been possible. "These energy signatures appeared about 20 minutes ago," Patel explained, bringing up the sensor data. "They're incredibly faint. Modern sensors would probably filter them out as background radiation. But the Vigilant's old analog systems, they're picking up something definite." Chen studied the readings carefully. The energy patterns were unlike anything she'd seen before, appearing and disappearing in regular intervals at the very edge of their sensor range. Modern ships would have dismissed them as sensor ghosts, their advanced filters automatically cleaning up such anomalies. "Have you cross-referenced these with the station's historical database?" Chen asked, already suspecting the answer. The Vigilant's computer cores still contained decades of accumulated data, including readings from encounters that had been classified and largely forgotten. "Yes, ma'am," Patel nodded, pulling up another display. "There's a partial match from an incident 23 years ago, just before Project Oracle was shut down. The file is heavily redacted, but..." She paused, highlighting a section of the report. "These energy signatures were associated with some kind of stealth technology that only the Vigilant sensors could detect." Chen felt her pulse quicken. She'd spent months piecing together fragments of Project Oracle's history, trying to understand why such a promising program had been suddenly abandoned. The official explanation cited budget constraints and technological obsolescence, but she'd found hints of something else. Something that had frightened the military leadership enough to bury the entire project. "Run a full spectrum analysis," she ordered. "Use the original sensor protocols, not the modern updates. And Maya," she added, using her lieutenant's first name, "keep this between us for now." Over the next few hours, Chen and Patel worked methodically, using the station's supposedly obsolete systems to track and analyze the mysterious signals. The more data they gathered, the more Chen's suspicions grew. The energy patterns weren't random. They showed clear signs of artificial origin and purpose. "Commander," Patel's voice was tense as she pulled up a new set of readings. "I think I know why these signatures looked familiar. They matched theoretical models for quantum phase shifting, the kind of technology that could make a ship virtually undetectable to modern sensors." Chen stared at the data, her mind racing. The Vigilant's primitive sensors worked on fundamentally different principles than modern equipment. While new ships relied on quantum scanning and AI-driven filtering, The old station used analog systems that could detect subtle variations in spacetime itself. "How many signatures are we tracking now?" she asked, dreading the answer. 17 distinct sources, Paddle replied quietly. "All moving in formation, all using the same stealth technology. And Mom, they're getting closer." Chen thought about the reports she should file, the warnings she should send to Fleet Command. But she knew what would happen. The same thing that had happened 23 years ago. The modern sensors would see nothing, and her warnings would be dismissed as malfunctions from obsolete equipment. The Vigilant had been stripped of most of its experimental weapons, but most wasn't all. Chen had spent months studying the station's original schematics, finding systems that had been deactivated but not removed, systems that the military had wanted to forget existed. "Maya, I need you to help me access the sealed sections of the station's database," Chen said, making a decision that would either save her career or end it completely. Project Oracle wasn't shut down because it failed. It was shut down because it succeeded, and what it discovered frightened people. As they worked through the night, decrypting old files and reactivating dormant systems, Chen couldn't shake the feeling that history was about to repeat itself. But this time, the Vigilant wouldn't be abandoned. This time, its ancient sensors had detected the threat early enough to make a difference. In the depths of the station's computer core, locked away behind decades of security protocols, they found the truth about Project Oracle. The project hadn't just been about developing new weapons. It had been created in response to something. Something that had been detected at the edge of human space. Something that used technology far beyond human understanding. Something that was now returning. "Commander," Paddle's voice shook slightly as she looked up from her console. "The signatures, they're accelerating. At their current trajectory, they'll reach the outer colonies in less than 72 hours. Chen nodded grimly. The Vigilant might be old, its weapons considered obsolete, but age didn't always equal weakness. Sometimes, the old ways were the best ways, especially when facing an enemy that had learned to counter all your modern defenses. "Begin reactivation sequences for all dormant systems," she ordered, "and prepare a message for Fleet Command. Tell them." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Tell them the ghosts have returned, and this time, we're ready for them." Fleet Command's response arrived 18 hours after Chen sent her warning. The message was brief, dismissive. "Modern sensor arrays show no evidence of alleged stealth signatures. Maintain standard patrol protocols. Do not activate unauthorized systems." Chen deleted the message with a sharp gesture, her frustration evident in the tightness of her jaw. The monitoring room had become their command center, its walls now covered with holographic displays showing data that the rest of the fleet couldn't or wouldn't see. "They're accelerating again," Lieutenant Paddle reported, her fingers dancing across her console. "The formation has tightened. These aren't scout ships, Commander. This is an invasion fleet." The past 18 hours had revealed a chilling pattern. What they'd initially detected as 17 signatures had multiplied. The Vigilant's unique sensors now tracked over 200 vessels, all using the same phase shift technology that made them invisible to modern detection systems. "Show me the Project Oracle files on their weapons capabilities," Chen ordered, bringing up another holographic window. The classified documents they'd uncovered painted a devastating picture. 23 years ago, the Vigilant had detected similar ships testing humanity's defenses. The encounter had been brief, but it had revealed technological capabilities that had shaken the military leadership to its core. "Ma'am," a new voice called from the doorway. Chief Engineer Marcus Rivera stepped into the room, his weathered face showing both excitement and concern. "We've completed the diagnostic on the sealed weapon systems. You need to see this." Chen followed Rivera through the station's maintenance corridors, areas that hadn't seen use in decades. The chief engineer had spent the last 12 hours exploring systems that officially didn't exist, trying to understand exactly what Project Oracle had created. They emerged into a vast chamber that had been listed as storage in the station's modern schematics. Banks of equipment lined the walls, their surfaces covered in dust, but their status lights still glowing with a faint blue luminescence. "This isn't just a weapons platform," Rivera explained, his voice filled with awe. "The whole station, its shape, its power distribution, even those old analog sensors, it's all part of one integrated system. The Vigilant isn't outdated. It's just so advanced that it looks primitive." Chen ran her hand along one of the control panels, wiping away years of dust to reveal intricate patterns etched into its surface. "Explain." "The modern fleet relies on quantum targeting, precision energy weapons, and AI-controlled defense systems," Rivera said, bringing up a technical diagram. "But the Vigilant, it works on completely different principles. It doesn't just fire weapons, it manipulates space itself." The chief engineer pointed to various sections of the station. "These outdated power systems, they're actually quantum field generators. The analog sensors, they're part of a space-time detection grid. Even the hull's unusual shape serves a purpose. It's designed to channel and amplify gravitational forces. That's why they shut it down," Chen murmured, pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place. The Vigilant wasn't obsolete. It was too powerful, too dangerous. They couldn't control it, so they buried it. A sudden alert interrupted their discussion. Lieutenant Patel's voice crackled over the comm. "Commander, we have a new development. The fleet. They're not just approaching. They're starting to surround us." Chen and Rivera rushed back to the monitoring room. The holographic displays showed the enemy fleet spreading out in a complex pattern, their ships moving with impossible precision. They were still days away from the outer colonies, but their trajectory had shifted. The Vigilant was now at the center of their formation. "They remember," Chen realized. "They remember what this station can do. That's why they're coming back now, when everyone's forgotten what the Vigilant really is." She turned to her small crew, seeing determination in their eyes. They might be considered rejects by the modern fleet, but they were exactly what humanity needed right now. People who could think beyond standard protocols, who could understand and use technology that defied conventional wisdom. "Chief, how long to bring the quantum field generators online?" she asked. Rivera consulted his datapad. 6 hours for basic power-up. Another 4 to reach full capacity. "But Commander, these systems were never fully tested. The theoretical outputs are incredible, but no one knows exactly what will happen when we activate everything." Chen nodded grimly. "The enemy knows. That's why they're here. They've spent 23 years preparing for this moment, developing countermeasures against our modern defenses. But the Vigilant," she smiled tightly, "the Vigilant is something they never figured out how to beat." "Commander," Patel called out, her voice urgent, "I'm detecting power spikes from multiple ships. They're charging weapons that don't match any known configuration." Chen studied the tactical display, watching as the enemy fleet continued its methodical approach. They were being careful, cautious. They remembered the station's capabilities, but they didn't know if it could still use them. Their entire strategy was built around modern human defenses against quantum targeting and AI-controlled systems. "Begin full reactivation sequence," she ordered. "Maya, start charging the field generators. Marcus, I need you to bring every system online, even the experimental ones. If Project Oracle designed it, I want it ready." As her crew rushed to comply, Chen sent one final message to Fleet Command. "Unknown hostile fleet approaching in stealth configuration. The Vigilant is activating all defensive systems. Recommend immediate evacuation of outer colonies. We will hold them here." She knew the response would be the same: disbelief, dismissal, perhaps even threats of disciplinary action. But none of that mattered now. The Vigilant had been built for this moment, designed to face an enemy that humanity hadn't been ready to acknowledge. In the depths of the station, long-dormant systems hummed to life. Power coursed through circuits that had waited decades to fulfill their purpose. The Vigilant wasn't just a relic of the past. It was humanity's best-kept secret, a weapon unlike anything the modern fleet possessed. And soon, the enemy would remember why. The first attack came without warning. A ripple of distorted space announced the arrival of the advance force, 5 ships materializing from their phase-shifted state less than 10,000 kilometers from the Vigilant. Their hulls gleamed with an otherworldly iridescence, defying traditional sensors' attempts to analyze their composition. Commander Chen stood in the Vigilant's newly reactivated primary control center, surrounded by humming equipment that hadn't seen use in decades. The station's old systems had spent the last 10 hours charging up, drawing power in ways that modern engineers would consider impossible. "Enemy vessels are charging weapons," Lieutenant Puddle reported, her voice steady despite the tension. "Energy signatures don't match any known configurations. They're using some kind of quantum resonance technology." "Let them fire first," Chen ordered, watching the tactical display. "Let's see what they've got." The enemy ship struck in perfect synchronization, their weapons releasing streams of coherent energy that seemed to twist the fabric of space itself. Modern shields would have been useless against such an attack. But the Vigilant wasn't using modern shields. The station's quantum field generators sprang to life, creating overlapping layers of distorted spacetime around the hull. The enemy's attack scattered across these fields, their energy dispersing in ways that defied conventional physics. "Direct hits," Chief Rivera called out from his engineering station. "But the field generators are holding. More than holding, they're actually absorbing the energy. Power levels are spiking across all systems." Chen allowed herself a small smile. This was what Project Oracle had discovered, what had frightened the military leadership so badly they'd buried the entire program. The Vigilant didn't just defend against attacks, it turned them into fuel for its own systems. "Multiple new contacts," Patel announced. 10 more ships dropping out of phase shift. They're adopting an attack formation. The enemy clearly expected their first strike to cripple the station's defenses. Finding the Vigilant not only intact but fully operational had thrown off their carefully planned strategy. But they were adapting quickly, their ships moving with inhuman precision to surround the station. "Begin primary sequence," Chen ordered, activating controls that had gathered dust for 23 years. "Target the nearest vessel with the graviton lance." Deep within the station, experimental weapons powered up. The Vigilant's unusual hull design suddenly made sense as energy began flowing through channels built into its structure. The station wasn't just a platform for weapons. It was a weapon itself. A beam of concentrated gravitational force lanced out from the station, invisible to conventional sensors, but devastating in its effect. The targeted enemy ship's phase shift field collapsed as its own mass was turned against it. The vessel crumpled inward, its advanced hull unable to withstand forces it was never designed to resist. The remaining ships reacted instantly, scattering to avoid similar attacks. But their evasive maneuvers revealed something crucial. They were afraid. They remembered what the Vigilant could do, and they had spent decades preparing countermeasures. But seeing those capabilities in action had shaken their confidence. "They're adjusting their shield frequencies," Rivera reported, analyzing the sensor data, "trying to adapt to our weapons. But these old systems, they're not following any patterns the enemy would recognize. Each shot is unique, impossible to predict." The enemy fleet launched another coordinated attack, this time using weapons that phased in and out of normal space. But the Vigilant's defenses had been designed to handle exactly this kind of technology. The station's quantum fields bent and twisted, redirecting the attacks back at their sources. "Power levels at 120% of theoretical maximum," Rivera called out, his voice a mix of excitement and concern. "The absorption matrices are exceeding all projected limits. We're generating more energy than the station was designed to handle." Chen studied the tactical displays, watching as the enemy ships regrouped for another assault. They were learning, adapting their tactics with each exchange. But so was the Vigilant. The station's old systems were proving more flexible than anyone had imagined, responding to situations its designers had never anticipated. "Commander," Patel's voice cut through the tension. Long-range sensors are picking up massive phase shift signatures. The main fleet, they're accelerating their approach. They'll be here in less than 6 hours. The advance force had been a test, Chen realized. The enemy wanted to assess the vigilance capabilities, to see if the station could still pose a threat to their invasion plans. The fact that they were speeding up their timetable meant they had their answer. Begin charging the primary containment grid, she ordered, accessing systems that even Project Oracle's files had marked as highly experimental. Reconfigure the quantum fields for maximum dispersal. Ma'am, Rivera protested. Those systems were never properly tested. The power requirements alone could tear the station apart. We're not going to fire them, Chen explained, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Not yet, but I want the enemy to see them charging up. I want them to remember exactly what they're facing. The effect was immediate. The remaining advance force ships pulled back, maintaining their firing positions but keeping their distance. They had expected to find an obsolete relic, but instead, they had awakened something they had hoped to never face again. As her crew worked to stabilize the station's surging power systems, Chen sent another message to Fleet Command. This time, she attached sensor logs of the battle, proof that the threat was real and that the Vigilant was humanity's best hope for survival. They'll have to listen now, Paddle said hopefully, watching as the data transmitted. Chen wasn't so sure. The modern fleet's arrogance ran deep, and admitting they were wrong about the Vigilant would mean acknowledging a threat they had chosen to ignore for decades. But none of that mattered anymore. In 6 hours, the main enemy fleet would arrive, bringing with it weapons and technology far beyond anything humanity had faced before. The Vigilant's experimental systems hummed with absorbed energy, its quantum fields rippling with power that modern science claimed was impossible. They had won the first round, but the real battle was yet to come. And Chen knew that victory would require pushing these old systems far beyond their original designs. The enemy had spent 23 years preparing for this invasion. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had assumed that humanity's greatest weapons were its newest ones. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. Time seemed to slow in the hours following the first battle. The Vigilance crew worked tirelessly, preparing for what they knew would be the fight of their lives. In the station's newly reactivated command center, Commander Chen studied the Project Oracle files with growing understanding of just how far ahead of their time the station's designers had been. Commander, Chief Rivera called out, emerging from one of the sealed sections. We found something in the auxiliary weapons bay. Something that wasn't in any of the official records. Chen followed him through corridors humming with power from the overcharged quantum field generators. The enemy's weapons had provided more energy than anyone had thought possible, and the old systems were adapting in ways that defied explanation. The auxiliary weapons bay had been listed as empty in modern schematics, another decommissioned section of the station. But as Rivera led her inside, Chen saw that it was anything but abandoned. The vast chamber was filled with devices that looked more like abstract sculptures than weapons, their surfaces etched with patterns that seemed to shift when viewed directly. They're quantum resonance amplifiers, Rivera explained, his voice filled with awe. The theoretical papers mentioned them, but everyone thought they were impossible to build. They're designed to capture and redirect quantum-level phenomena, including the phase shift technology our enemies are using. Chen ran her hand along one of the devices, feeling a subtle vibration that seemed to exist just at the edge of perception. Why wasn't this in the Project Oracle files? Because these aren't Project Oracle tech, Rivera said, pulling up schematics on his datapad. Look at the manufacturing dates. These were built 5 years after the project was officially shut down. Someone kept working in secret, preparing for exactly this situation. Before Chen could respond, Lieutenant Patel's voice came through the comm system. Commander, you need to see this. The enemy fleet, they're doing something new. Back in the command center, the tactical displays showed a chilling sight. The main enemy fleet had dropped out of phase shift early, forming a massive sphere around the station. Hundreds of ships, their hulls gleaming with that same otherworldly iridescence, positioned themselves with mechanical precision. "They're creating some kind of resonance field," Paddle reported, her fingers flying over her console. "The energy readings, they're like nothing we've ever seen. They're going to try to overwhelm our defenses all at once." Chen studied the enemy formation, her mind racing. The quantum resonance amplifiers in the auxiliary bay suddenly made sense. Whoever had continued Project Oracle's work had anticipated this exact scenario. "Chief, begin integrating those amplifiers into our defense grid," she ordered. "Maya, I need a complete analysis of their resonance patterns. They think they know everything about this station's capabilities. Let's show them how wrong they are." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Rivera and his engineering team worked to connect the newly discovered weapons to the station's power grid, while Paddle mapped the complex energy patterns being generated by the enemy fleet. The Vigilant's old systems continued to hum with absorbed power, ready to be unleashed in ways their designers had only theorized. "Commander," a new voice called out. Dr. Sarah Wells, the station's science officer, rushed into the command center. She had been analyzing data from the first battle, trying to understand exactly how the enemy's technology worked. "I found something in the sensor logs. Their phase shift technology. It's not just for stealth. They're using it to coordinate their entire fleet, sharing targeting data and tactical information through quantum-entangled fields." Chen saw the implications immediately. The enemy's greatest strength, their perfect coordination, could become their greatest weakness. The quantum resonance amplifiers weren't just weapons. They were a key to disrupting the very foundation of the enemy's tactical advantage. "How long until they complete their resonance field?" she asked, turning to Patel. 20 minutes, maybe less. Once it's stable, they'll be able to focus the combined power of their entire fleet into a single attack. Our quantum fields are strong, but they've never been tested against anything like this. Chen made her decision. They couldn't wait for the enemy to complete their preparations. The Vigilant might be humanity's last line of defense, but it was more than just a defensive platform. It was time to show everyone, the enemy, fleet command, and maybe even themselves, exactly what this old station could do. "Begin power-up sequence for the quantum resonance amplifiers," she ordered. "Reconfigure our field generators to match the enemy's resonance patterns. We're going to turn their own technology against them." "Commander," Rivera warned, "if we push these systems too hard, we could tear the station apart. The power levels we're dealing with, they're beyond anything the designers ever imagined." "No," Chen corrected him. "They're exactly what the designers imagined. That's why they built all this, why they kept working even after the project was shut down. They knew this day would come." The enemy fleet continued their methodical deployment, their ships moving in perfect synchronization as they strengthened their resonance field. They had expected to find an outdated relic, its experimental weapons degraded by decades of neglect. Instead, they had awakened something that had spent 23 years waiting for this moment. "All systems ready," Rivera reported. "Quantum resonance amplifiers are charged and synchronized. Field generators are at maximum capacity. Whatever you're planning, Commander, we're as ready as we'll ever be." Chen took a deep breath, looking at each member of her crew. They had been sent to the Vigilant because the modern fleet thought they weren't good enough. But their willingness to think differently, to understand and use technology that others had dismissed as obsolete, had made them exactly the right people for this moment. "Begin primary sequence," she ordered. "Let's remind these aliens why they were so afraid of this station in the first place." Deep within the Vigilant, experimental systems powered up, their combined energy making the very fabric of space tremble. The station's unusual design, its outdated technology, even its isolated location. Everything suddenly made sense. It wasn't just a weapons platform or a defensive station. It was a key to understanding forces that humanity had only begun to comprehend. And now, facing an enemy that threatened everything they held dear, it was time to use that knowledge. The enemy struck first, their resonance field pulsing with enough energy to tear a modern battleship in half. Hundreds of ships fired simultaneously, their combined power focused into a single reality-bending beam that crossed the void between their formation and the Vigilant in an instant. Commander Chen watched calmly as the attack approached, trusting in systems that had waited decades for this moment. Activate quantum resonance amplifiers. Full power to all field generators. The Vigilant's response was unlike anything humanity had ever achieved. The station's quantum fields didn't just absorb the enemy's attack. They caught it, held it, and began to twist it into new configurations. The patterns etched into the hull came alive with shifting energy as decades-old technology proved it was far from obsolete. Energy conversion at 200% capacity, Rivera reported, his voice tight with concentration. The amplifiers are working better than we could have hoped. They're not just stopping their attack, they're reading their entire command and control network. Through the station's sensors, Chen could see the enemy's perfect formation beginning to waver. Their quantum-entangled communications, the source of their flawless coordination, was being disrupted by frequencies they had never anticipated facing. Multiple ships losing phase synchronization, Patul called out. Their resonance field is becoming unstable. They're trying to adapt, but our signal patterns keep changing faster than they can respond. This was what Project Oracle's designers had discovered, Chen realized. The enemy's greatest advantage, their advanced technology, had become a vulnerability. They had built their entire strategy around quantum-level coordination, assuming that humanity's primitive weapons could never interfere with such sophisticated systems. Begin second phase, Chen ordered. Redirect their own energy through the amplifier network. Show them exactly what this old station can do. The Vigilant's hull thrummed with power as it executed commands that had existed only in theory until now. The quantum resonance amplifiers spun the enemy's attack into new configurations, creating feedback loops that rippled through their formation with devastating effect. Ships began to flicker and distort as their phase shift systems malfunctioned. The perfect sphere of their attack formation dissolved into chaos as vessel after vessel lost connection to their command network. Some tried to retreat, their crews finally showing fear as they faced technology they couldn't understand. But the enemy commander wasn't finished. The largest ship in their fleet, a massive vessel at the heart of their formation, began channeling energy in a way that made the station's sensors scream warnings. They were attempting something desperate, something that would destroy them along with their target. They're creating a quantum singularity, Dr. Wells announced, her face pale as she analyzed the readings. They're going to try to tear a hole in space itself. If they succeed, nothing will survive. Not them, not us, not even the outer colonies. Chen had expected something like this. The enemy would rather die than admit defeat, especially against technology they had dismissed as primitive. But the Vigilant had been designed to handle forces that modern science could barely comprehend. Divert all power to the primary containment grid, she ordered. Reconfigure the quantum fields for total spectrum coverage. And Maya, send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them to watch closely. They're about to see what this old station can really do. The enemy flagship's attack built to impossible levels, reality itself beginning to bend around its focal point. But as the quantum singularity began to form, something unexpected happened. The Vigilant's fields reached out, not to block the attack, but to embrace it. Commander, Rivera shouted, the amplifiers are synchronizing with their singularity. The containment grid is. It's doing something I've never seen before. The station's designers had understood something fundamental about space, time, and energy that their successors had forgotten in their rush to build newer, more efficient systems. The Vigilant didn't fight against the forces being unleashed. It worked with them, channeling them, redirecting them in ways that even its creators might never have imagined. The quantum singularity collapsed in on itself, taking the enemy flagship with it. But instead of spreading destruction across the sector, the energy was caught in the Vigilant's quantum fields, feeding back through systems that had waited 23 years for exactly this moment. The effect rippled outward through the enemy fleet. Ships that had lost their phase synchronization found themselves trapped in overlapping fields of distorted spacetime. Those that tried to escape discovered that their advanced engines no longer responded to commands. In less than 5 minutes, it was over. The mighty invasion fleet hung motionless in space, their sophisticated technology rendered useless by weapons they had thought long obsolete. The few vessels that had escaped destruction or capture were already fleeing at maximum speed, their crews carrying warning of what they had found waiting for them in human space. "Damage report," Chen called out, though she already knew the answer. The Vigilant's old systems hadn't just survived, they had performed beyond anyone's expectations. All systems functioning at optimal levels, Rivera reported with a grin. The power core is actually running more efficiently than before. Whatever their singularity was supposed to do, our containment grid converted it into usable energy. "Message from Fleet Command," Patil announced. They're requesting our sensor logs. All of them. And they're asking about reactivating other Guardian-class stations. Chen smiled. The modern fleet would have a lot of questions about what they had just witnessed. Project Oracle's technology had proven itself beyond any doubt, demonstrating that humanity's path to the stars didn't always require abandoning its past achievements. As cleanup ships began arriving to secure the disabled enemy vessels, Chen stood at the Vigilant's main viewport, watching distant stars through glass that had witnessed humanity's first steps into deep space. The station had been called obsolete, outdated, a relic of an abandoned age. But age didn't always mean weakness. Sometimes the old ways were the best ways, and sometimes the guardians of the past were exactly what humanity needed to secure its future. "Begin full systems diagnostic," she ordered, already thinking about the work ahead. "I want to understand everything these old systems can do, because something tells me we're going to need them again." The Vigilant's quantum fields rippled with absorbed energy, its experimental weapons humming with power that modern science was only beginning to understand. It had been built to defend humanity, and after 23 years of waiting, it had finally fulfilled its purpose. Not bad, Chen thought, for an obsolete piece of technology that everyone had forgotten about. Not bad at all.